Hello, and welcome to Bedtime Past Stories. Tonight, find a comfortable place, let the room grow quiet, and allow the day to fall slowly behind you. Before we begin, take a quiet second to subscribe if you enjoy calm bedtime history, relaxing historical documentaries, and stories made to help you fall asleep. Now, settle in, lower the lights, and let your breathing slow as we travel back to the warm stone streets of ancient Pompeii, where the fountain still ran, the ovens were still warm, the mountain waited quietly above the city, and an ordinary Roman day was about to become one of the most remembered days in history. Tonight, we're going to walk through Pompeii. Not the Pompeii of sudden disaster. Not yet. Not the city covered in ash, silent under the earth, rediscovered centuries later by archaeologists with brushes, notebooks, and careful hands. Before Pompeii became a ruin, it was a living city. Before it became a symbol of destruction, it was a place of bread, wine, water, voices, footsteps, paint, stone, heat, dust, trade, prayer, work, gossip, and ordinary human plans. Before the ash came down, the city woke up, and that is where we begin, with morning. With a Roman town near the Bay of Naples resting beneath the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, a mountain that most people around it did not understand as a danger in the way we understand it now. To them, it was part of the landscape, a high shape beyond the rooftops, a familiar presence above vineyards, farms, villas, roads, and towns. The mountain had been there yesterday. It would be there tomorrow. It stood in the distance like something permanent. The city did not wake in fear of it. The city woke because it was time to wake. The first light spreads slowly across the roofs. It touches the upper walls first, then the tops of columns, then the edges of painted plaster, then the stones of the streets. The morning is warm as mornings can be in southern Italy, with the promise of heat later in the day. The air holds dust, sea breeze, cooking smoke, dampness from fountains, and the dry mineral smell of stone that has spent the night cooling under the sky. Pompeii is not silent. A living Roman city is never completely silent once morning begins. A rooster calls somewhere behind a wall, a door opens, a wooden shutter moves, a mule shifts near a cart, a fountain splashes into its basin, a worker calls to another across a narrow street, a dog moves through a doorway nose low to the ground. Footsteps begin on stone. In the distance, perhaps, a hammer strikes. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to tell the city that work has begun again. The streets of Pompeii are paved with stone, worn by wheels, feet, animals, and years of use. They are not smooth like a modern pavement. The stones are broad, uneven, and strong, with ruts cut by carts over time. In places, stepping stones rise across the street, allowing pedestrians to cross above rainwater, mud, or whatever else might pass along the road surface. These raised stones are one of the details that make Pompeii feel so close to us. They are practical, they are human, they tell us where people walked. A person crossing the street in the morning does not think of being preserved for history. They simply step from one stone to another, one foot, then the next. The same gesture repeated by thousands of people over years. A merchant, a child, a slave carrying water, a woman going to a fountain, a baker's assistant, a traveller from another town, a man heading toward the forum, a person who knows exactly where the stones are because they have crossed this street hundreds of times. Pompeii was a town of routines, and routines are what make the final day so powerful. Because on that morning, most people did not know they were living inside a last routine. The fountain still ran, the ovens were still warm, the shops still opened, the mountain still waited. Pompeii was still Pompeii. Let us walk into the city slowly. The streets are narrow in places, broader in others, lined with buildings whose outer walls do not always reveal the richness within. Some facades are plain, practical, marked by doorways, shop fronts, small windows, signs, painted notices, and the wear of daily life. Behind some of those walls, however, there are atriums open to the sky, painted rooms, small gardens, mosaic floors, household shrines, columns, water basins, and carefully arranged spaces where wealth, family, religion, and status meet. A Roman house is a world turned inward, from the street to doorway, inside an atrium, a shallow pool to catch rainwater, painted walls, rooms opening around the central space, perhaps a garden beyond, perhaps a dining room where guests were received, Perhaps a household shrine where offerings were made to domestic gods. The city has many layers: public street, shopfront, threshold, atrium, garden, private room, storage space, kitchen, servants' quarters, workshop, everything close together, yet separated by walls, status, and custom. In one house, a servant or enslaved person may be sweeping the entrance. In another, a household member checks the morning's tasks. In a wealthier home, the painted walls show landscapes, mythological scenes, architectural fantasies, animals, gods, or delicate patterns. Pompeii's wall paintings are among the reasons the city became so valuable to history. They preserve not only decoration, but taste, aspiration, and the Roman love of turning walls into imagined worlds. To walk through such a room in the morning would be to pass through colour: reds, yellows, blacks, soft blues, white panels, painted columns, tiny figures, a wall that pretends to open into another space, a garden that is real beside a garden that is painted. The outside world is dusty and noisy. Inside, the walls create another kind of reality. But even beautiful houses are tied to daily labour. Someone must clean them, someone must bring water, someone must prepare food, someone must manage storage, clothing, lamps, animals, messages, guests, errands, and household business. Roman elegance rested on work, and much of that work was done by people whose names are not remembered. This matters. Pompeii was not only a city of wealthy homeowners, it was a city of workers, shopkeepers, bakers, fullers, slaves, freedmen, labourers, merchants, carters, tavern keepers, priests, children, travellers, sailors, farmers from nearby land. People of different status moving through the same streets but not living the same lives. In a bedtime history, we slow down enough to see them all, not as statistics, not as dramatic characters, but as presences. A person carrying amphorae, a person grinding grain, a person serving warm food at a counter, a person filling a jar at a fountain, a person repairing a wall still damaged from an older earthquake, a person leading a mule through a street, a person pausing in the shade, a person looking up at the mountain without concern. Pompeii was still Pompeii, the ovens were still warm, the fountain still ran, the sky was still clear. In one street, a bakery is already alive. Pompeii had many bakeries, and some of them have left extraordinary traces: mills, ovens, workspaces, and in one of the most famous discoveries, loaves of bread carbonized and preserved by the eruption. But on the morning before disaster, those loaves were not archaeological objects. They were food, they were work, they were breakfast, trade, and routine. The bakery smells of grain, heat, smoke, and flour. Large stone mills stand in the workspace. They are heavy, practical, almost sculptural in their shape. Grain is poured in and ground into flour, often with the help of animal or human labour. The oven is hot. The baker or workers move with practiced efficiency, not because history is watching, but because customers will come. Bread is one of the deep rhythms of urban life. A city can have marble, frescoes, baths, temples, and theatres, but it must also have bread. People will need to eat. The oven does not care about politics. The dough rises because the conditions are right. The bread bakes because someone prepared the fire. A customer comes to the doorway. A loaf is chosen. Coins may pass. A short exchange takes place. Perhaps about price. Perhaps about yesterday's news. Perhaps about the tremors that people have felt in the region before. Perhaps about nothing important at all. Most conversations vanish from history because they are not meant to last. But daily life is made from vanished conversations. Outside the bakery, the street is beginning to warm. The stone underfoot will grow hotter later, but for now it is still gentle. The walls cast shadows. The ruts in the road guide cartwheels. The stepping stones divide the path. A fountain nearby catches the light. Pompeii's public fountains are one of its most human details. Water flows through the city, distributed to fountains where residents collect it. The fountain is not only infrastructure, it is a meeting point. People come with jars, buckets, vessels, and conversation. Children wait, servants wait, neighbours speak, news travels. A small delay becomes a social space. The water falls into the basin, steady, cool, clear enough to catch light. A woman or servant fills a vessel. The jar grows heavy. The person adjusts their grip. Someone else waits behind. A child runs a hand near the water and is told to stop. The fountain does what it did yesterday. The city trusts it. The mountain waits above. Farther down the street, a thermopolium opens to the public. Modern people sometimes describe it loosely as a kind of fast food counter, though that phrase can make the ancient world sound too modern if used carelessly. It was a place where prepared food or drink could be served from large jars set into a counter. For many people who did not have full kitchens or who worked away from home, such places mattered. Imagine the counter in morning light. Large openings holding vessels, a painted surface, a person arranging food, a customer leaning slightly forward, the smell of warm food, wine, oil, herbs, bread, and stone dust. A street meal in Pompeii is not luxurious, but it is part of the city's ordinary rhythm. People stop, eat, drink, talk, move on. A city lives through such pauses. Pompeii's streets hold many forms of commerce. Shop fronts open directly onto the road. A workshop may sell what it makes. A counter may face the street while domestic space continues behind. A person passing by can see work happening. Grinding, serving, weighing, cutting, mending, washing, carrying. The boundary between public and private is active, not silent. A fuller's workshop may be preparing cloth. A wine shop may open its jars. A small shrine may receive a gesture of respect. A merchant may check accounts. A slave may carry a message through the street. An animal may resist moving where its handler wants it to go. A cart may grind slowly along the stones. All of it is normal. The ordinary is important because it is what will be lost. This is the same truth that made Titanic powerful. Before the iceberg, the ship was a world of routine. Before the eruption, Pompeii was a city of routine. The tragedy begins with normal life, not because normal life is boring, because normal life is fragile. We continue toward the Forum. The Forum is the heart of public life, an open civic space framed by buildings, temples, colonnades, statues, and the business of the city. Here, politics, religion, commerce, status, and public identity overlap. The Forum is not always crowded in the same way throughout the day, but it is one of the places where the city understands itself. From certain views, Mount Vesuvius rises beyond Pompeii. Today, when we imagine Pompeii, the mountain dominates the story. But for those living there, the mountain was not necessarily the center of attention. It was landscape. It may have been seen as fertile, useful, familiar. Vineyards and farms spread around the region. The volcanic soil that made the area dangerous also made it productive. This is one of history's quiet ironies. The mountain gave richness before it gave ruin. Fertile land, vines, gardens, fields, a landscape people trusted because it had supported life. A dangerous thing can appear generous for a long time. In the Forum, morning light falls across columns. The stone is warm in places and still cool in others. A man speaks with another near a building. A person passes carrying documents. A seller moves through the edge of the space. Someone pauses near a temple. A dog crosses the open area with no concern for civic dignity. The city is practical even in its grand places. Religion is present too. Pompeii has temples, household shrines, images of gods, offerings, rituals and festivals woven into public and private life. The Roman world is full of divine presences, obligations, omens, and traditions. A household shrine in an atrium, a temple near the Forum, a gesture before a journey, a small offering before a meal. These things belong to the rhythm of the city. On this day, perhaps someone makes an offering, perhaps someone prays for business, for health, for safe travel, for household protection, for a child, for a debt to be settled, for ordinary things. Most prayers are not grand, they are human, and the mountain waits. The morning grows brighter, heat begins to gather in the stones. Pompeii is close enough to the sea to be connected to wider trade and movement, even though it is not directly a great imperial capital. Goods move through the region: wine, oil, fish sauce, grain, pottery, cloth, building materials and luxury items all participate in networks larger than the town. Roman roads connect cities, farms, villas, ports, and markets. Pompeii is local and connected at once. In a shop, amphorae stand ready, tall ceramic vessels for transporting wine, oil, sauce, or other goods. Their shapes are practical and familiar, stacked, leaned, sealed, marked perhaps. handled by people who know their weight. An amphora is not just a container, it is a sign of trade, a sign of agriculture, a sign of labour from fields to kiln to cart to ship to shop. The Roman world is built from such objects: a lamp, a cup, a jar, a coin, a tile, a loaf, a stylus, a sandal, a small bronze fitting. The ordinary objects of Pompeii are one reason the city moves us so deeply. The eruption preserved things that usually disappear: bread, wall paintings, counters, tools, vessels, graffiti, rooms, streets, even the spaces where bodies had been. It froze the ordinary in a way that is almost impossible to encounter elsewhere. But on this morning, nothing is frozen yet. Everything is moving. A door opens, a broom sweeps dust, a fountain splashes, a cartwheel catches in a rut, a seller arranges goods, a household prepares food, a child runs, a dog sleeps in shade, a man pauses in the forum, a woman adjusts her veil or garment, a baker checks the oven. Pompeii was still Pompeii. The city has not yet become memory. Near a house entrance, a painted wall catches our attention. Frescoes and painted surfaces in Pompeii tell us about taste, wealth, imitation, fantasy, and domestic identity. Some houses are large and elegant, others modest. But even smaller spaces could use colour and decoration in ways that made rooms feel richer than their dimensions. Paint can transform plaster into imagined marble, garden, architecture, myth, or landscape. Imagine a room with red panels, a dark border, a delicate painted bird, a small view into an imaginary garden. The morning light enters from the atrium and touches the wall softly. No one in the house thinks of the painting as a museum treasure. It is simply part of the room. The beauty is lived with. This is a key to Pompeii's emotional power. The city does not preserve only monuments. It preserves lived beauty. A wall someone saw while eating, a floor someone crossed while carrying a lamp, a courtyard where someone paused in shade, a counter where food was served, a bakery where bread was made, a wall where someone scratched a message, a street where cartwheels left ruts. The human scale is everywhere. In the baths, the city has another rhythm. Roman baths are not only places for washing, they are social, bodily, architectural, and cultural spaces. People go to bathe, speak, exercise, relax, conduct business, observe others, and participate in a shared habit of urban life. Warm rooms, hot rooms, cool rooms, changing spaces, pools, steam, light, and conversation create an environment very different from the dusty street. The baths smell of warm stone, oil, damp air, and bodies. Voices echo against walls, water moves, a person steps from one temperature to another, heat loosens the body. Public bathing connects the city through routine. On the last day, the baths may not be full in the exact way we imagine at every hour, but their presence matters. They remind us that Pompeii was not a primitive or silent place. It had systems, comforts, habits, and pleasures. People cared about the body, about cleanliness, about status, about social appearance, about leisure. A city is not only where people survive, it is where they make routines of comfort. Somewhere else, a wall still shows signs of repair from the earthquake of 62 CE. This earlier earthquake had damaged Pompeii years before the eruption. Many buildings had been repaired, but some areas still carried traces of restoration, rebuilding, or unfinished work. This memory matters. The people of Pompeii knew the ground could shake. They knew damage. They knew repair. They had lived through instability before, but an earthquake is not the same as understanding a volcano. Tremors may have become part of regional life. Cracks repaired, walls rebuilt, shrines restored, work resumed. People adapt to danger when it becomes familiar. That is another quiet lesson. A warning repeated often can become background. If the ground shakes sometimes and life continues, then another tremor may not feel like the end of the world. The mountain waits. At a crossroads, the street widens slightly. There may be a fountain, a shop, a doorway, a wall marked by notices or graffiti. Pompeii's graffiti are famous because they preserve voices that feel startlingly close. Names, jokes, advertisements, political slogans, boasts, insults, love notes, counts, and everyday marks. We will not quote them here, and in our images we avoid readable text, but their existence matters. They show that the walls spoke, not formally, not always respectfully, but humanly. People scratch themselves into the city because people have always wanted to leave marks. A name, a thought, a complaint, a desire, a recommendation, a joke, a trace. The ash that buried Pompeii preserved not only official history but these casual human marks. On this morning, a person passing such a wall might barely notice them. They are part of the city's noise, like modern signs, stains, scratches and posters, too ordinary to be special until time removes everything around them. We walk on, the sun is higher now, the light becomes stronger on upper walls, while the shade remains cool in narrow streets. Pompeii is a city of contrasts, sun and shade, public and private, wealth and labour, beauty and dust, mountain and sea, routine and danger. These contrasts are what make it rich for a long sleep documentary. The mind can wander without losing the thread. A street leads toward a house with a small garden, another toward a workshop, another toward the forum, another toward the city gate. Beyond the gate, roads lead to villas, farms, neighbouring towns, and the broader Roman world. Herculaneum lies not far away, closer to the mountain and sea, another town that will be transformed by the eruption. But tonight, our focus remains Pompeii. Herculaneum belongs to the wider story, a reminder that the disaster was regional, not only one city. Yet Pompeii, with its streets and spaces preserved so vividly, becomes our walking place. A man leads a mule through a gate. A cart leaves with goods. A traveller enters with dust on clothing. A person near the gate asks a question. The city breathes in and out through its entrances. People leave. People arrive. No one thinks of fleeing yet. Why would they? The day is still normal. Perhaps there have been small tremors in recent days. Perhaps animals have behaved strangely, as animals sometimes do. Perhaps wells, springs or fumes have changed in ways people noticed or later remembered. But memory after disaster rearranges signs. What seems meaningful afterward may not have felt decisive before. This is important. We must not make Pompeii's people seem foolish because they did not read the mountain as we do. They did not live with modern volcanology. They did not have seismographs, satellite imagery, eruption forecasts, or scientific models of volcanic behaviour. They had experience, rumour, religion, observation, habit, and memory. They knew the ground could shake. They knew the region was fertile. They saw the mountain as part of their world. To them, the future was not a documentary title. It was just the day ahead. A woman fills water, a baker prepares bread, a shopkeeper opens a counter, a child runs through shade, a man argues about business, a servant carries a basket, the mountain waits. By late morning or midday, the city is fully awake. The forum has more movement, shops are open, meals are being prepared, the baths may be used, fountains continue to flow, the streets grow warmer, dust rises under feet and cartwheels, dogs find shade. People move between work, errands, food, worship, conversation, and rest. This part of the day must be allowed to breathe, because if we rush to the eruption too quickly, we lose the city. And the city is what gives the final hours their meaning. A disaster without a world before it becomes spectacle. A world before disaster becomes memory. So we stay with Pompeii. We listen to the fountain. We smell bread. We see the red walls. We feel warm stone. We pass the stepping stones. We hear a cartwheel in its rut. We watch a hand lift a jar. We see a patch of shade under a doorway. We notice the mountain only at the edge of vision. Still there, still ordinary, still waiting. The city may also carry signs of tension from the past. The earthquake of '62 had damaged buildings. Repairs had been ongoing. Some households may have lived with cracks, unfinished walls, scaffolding, or repaired plaster. Some temples and public buildings may not have been fully restored. Pompeii, like any city, was not perfect. It was patched, rebuilt, adapted, argued over, and maintained. This makes it more real. A city is never finished. Not in Rome, not in Pompeii, not in any age. There is always a wall to repair, a debt to settle, a road to clean, a roof to fix, a meal to prepare, a child to watch, a customer to satisfy, a prayer to make, a body to wash, a jar to carry, a door to close, and in the middle of all that unfinished life, history can arrive. That is why final hours are so powerful. They interrupt. They do not wait for people to be ready. Titanic's passengers had not finished their lives. Pompeii's people had not finished theirs. The city was in the middle of a day. As the first block comes toward its close, we place ourselves in a quiet street during the warm part of the day. The stones hold sunlight. The shadows from buildings create cool bands across the road. A fountain continues its soft movement nearby. A bakery door stands open. A painted wall glows faintly in reflected light. The smell of bread, oil, dust, and warm plaster settles in the air. Above the rooftops, Vesuvius rises, familiar, silent, almost peaceful. A person glances at it and looks away. There is work to do. There is bread to buy. There is water to carry. There are errands to finish before the day grows hotter. The mountain does not yet command the city's full attention. That will change. In the next part of the story, the mountain will begin to speak, not with one simple warning that everyone understands, but through signs that arrive unevenly: tremors, strange light, dust, memory of old damage, a plume rising where no plume should be, and the slow realization that the familiar landscape is becoming unfamiliar. But for now, Pompeii remains alive. The streets are open, the fountains still run, the ovens are still warm, the painted rooms still hold their colours, the forum still receives footsteps, the thermopolium still serves food, the baths still promise comfort, the walls still hold casual human marks, the city still believes in the day. And above it all, the mountain waits in silence, while ordinary life continues beneath the bright Campanian sky. The second part of the story begins with a small uneasiness. Not panic, not yet. Not the sky turned black, not ash in the streets, not roofs bending under weight, not silence over the city. Only uneasiness, the kind that arrives before people have a name for it. Pompeii is still awake beneath the warm Campanian sky. The fountains still run, the ovens are still warm, the streets still carry footsteps, carts, animals, voices, and the ordinary movement of a Roman town going through its day. The mountain is still there, rising beyond the roofs, familiar and quiet. And because it is familiar, it is not yet fully feared. A person can live beside danger for years and begin to see it as landscape. The people of Pompeii knew the ground could shake. They remembered damage. They knew walls could crack, tiles could fall, columns could shift, and repairs could take years. The earthquake of 62 CE had left marks across the region, and even now, years later, not every scar was completely erased. A patched wall, a rebuilt doorway, an unfinished repair, a temple still showing signs of restoration. All of these were reminders that the earth beneath Pompeii was not perfectly still. But memory becomes ordinary when life continues. If a wall cracks and is repaired, people return to the room. If a tremor passes and the house stands, people talk about it for a while, then go back to work. If animals become restless one morning and calm again by evening, the story becomes only another story. The dangerous sign becomes part of the background. This is how a warning can lose its sharpness. On this day, perhaps there are tremors, small ones, enough to make a cup shift, enough to make dust fall from a crack in plaster, enough for a person to pause in a doorway and look up, enough for a dog to lift its head, enough for someone near a fountain to stop speaking for a moment. Then the city resumes, because cities are very good at resuming. A tremor passes through the stones, a wall gives a faint sound, a hanging lamp trembles, a worker steadies a jar, a woman looks toward the mountain, a baker glances at the oven, then a child laughs somewhere and the sound of the fountain returns to the foreground. Pompeii is still Pompeii, the fountains still run, the ovens are still warm, the mountain waits, the morning deepens into midday, and the light grows stronger. Heat gathers on the stone streets, the shadows grow sharper beneath porticos, doorways, and awnings. People move with the practical rhythm of a warm day, faster in the sun, slower in shade, pausing where water or shelter makes the air easier to bear. At a thermopolium, the counter is busy enough. A person leans over the openings where food and drink are kept. Another waits. A small exchange happens. A coin, a bowl, a cup, a few words. The surface of the counter is worn smooth by use. The painted wall nearby catches the light. Behind the counter, someone works with the tired focus of a person who has done this many times. Then the ground shifts, only slightly. A vessel knocks softly against another. A customer looks down. The server pauses, hand still on the counter. For a moment, everyone listens. The street outside seems to hold its breath. Then nothing follows. No collapse, no shout, No great rupture, only the old city settling again, or so it seems. Someone makes a remark, someone shrugs, someone says the Earth has done this before, the service continues. This is one of the hardest things for us to understand from the safety of hindsight. We want signs to appear clearly. We want the Earth to warn people in a language they cannot mistake. But real warning often arrives mixed with normality. A small tremor can mean nothing. A strange smell can pass. A restless animal can settle. A plume can look like weather until it no longer does. People do not live in constant readiness for disaster. They live in errands, meals, heat, debt, work, family, habit. If every sign became an emergency, life could not continue. And so, in Pompeii, life continues. Near a fountain, water splashes into a stone basin. A young person fills a vessel, perhaps a slave or servant sent from a nearby house. The vessel grows heavy as it fills. Another person waits behind, balancing an empty jar against the hip. Conversation resumes after the tremor as if the pause had never happened. The fountain is one of the most ordinary places in the city, and that is why it matters. Water has to be carried no matter what the mountain does in the distance. Bread has to be bought. A message has to be delivered. A garment has to be washed. A guest has to be received. An animal has to be fed. The ordinary does not yield easily to the extraordinary, but the day is beginning to change. Subtly at first. Perhaps the air feels different. Perhaps the light seems thinner. Perhaps a faint haze gathers above the mountain where there had been only sky. Perhaps some people notice it, while others do not. In the forum, a man looks up and narrows his eyes. The sun is bright, and at first it is hard to tell what he's seeing. A cloud above Vesuvius? Smoke? Dust? Something rising? Something ordinary? Something not ordinary? The shape is distant, then larger, a vertical presence beginning to form above the mountain. It does not yet dominate the whole sky, but it draws the eye. A person points. Another follows the gesture. A small group turns. The mountain, which was background, begins to become subject. This is the first true shift. Not the tremor, not the falling dust. The moment when people begin looking at the mountain not as scenery, but as something active. Above Vesuvius, a column begins to rise. To us, knowing what happened, it is unmistakable. It is the beginning of the eruption. But to people in the city, the interpretation may not be immediate. They did not have a modern category ready in the mind. Plinian eruption, volcanic column, pyroclastic danger, ashfall, collapse of eruption column. They saw a mountain doing something strange. They saw a cloud where no normal cloud should be. They saw height, motion, darkness, perhaps flashes within it, perhaps a growing shape against the sky. A person may have thought of smoke, or divine anger, or an omen, or a fire beyond the slopes, or some strange weather, or the old stories of the earth shaking again. The city enters uncertainty, and uncertainty is slow. The bakery continues for a while. The bread cannot simply be forgotten. The oven is hot, dough is prepared, customers still come. Someone may stand in the doorway looking out toward the street, wiping flour from a hand while listening to a passerby talk about the mountain. Another worker may say there is no time for staring. Bread burns if ignored. The oven's heat remains close and practical. The mountain's danger is distant and undefined. This contrast holds the city in place. In a house with painted walls, dust falls again from a repaired crack. A servant looks up. A small line of powder has settled on a table or floor. It may be from the wall. It may be from the ceiling. The household has known dust before. Every ancient city is full of dust. But this feels slightly different because the air outside is changing too. Someone opens a doorway to look. The light in the street is less clean than before. Not dark yet, not frightening yet, but altered. As if the day has been covered by a thin veil. At the forum, more people are watching. The column above the mountain grows. It rises upward, then spreads at the top, perhaps like a great pine tree in the sky, as ancient observers would later describe such eruptions. The image is beautiful in a terrible way. A trunk of dark material rising from the mountain, then widening high above the landscape. At first, awe may be stronger than fear. Human beings often look before they flee. A strange sky gathers witnesses. A mountain speaking after generations of silence is not immediately understood as a command to run. It is first seen, then discussed, then doubted, then interpreted, then for some, feared. The city's sounds shift, not stop, shift. The normal market voices continue, but with more pauses. A mule resists a handler's pull, a child asks a question, a seller answers a customer too sharply because attention is elsewhere. A person hurries toward a house, another hurries toward the forum to see. Someone says they should leave, someone else says it will pass, someone remembers the earthquake, someone laughs uneasily, someone prays. The mountain waits no longer, the mountain has begun. But Pompeii still has time to misunderstand. A soft dust begins to fall. At first, it may be almost delicate. Fine particles descending from the changed sky, settling on shoulders, rooftops, counters, fountains, the leaves of garden plants, the warm surfaces of stone, and the threshold between street and home. It is not yet the heavy fall that will change movement and weight. It is a sign, light enough to brush away. A person touches a finger to a surface, grey, or pale, or darker, depending on the material, not ordinary street dust, something from the mountain. The fountain water catches it. The surface becomes speckled. The basin receives what the sky is giving. The ash is quiet. This is one of the reasons Pompeii's final hours can be told in a sleep-like rhythm without making them less serious. The disaster begins not with a single loud event, but with falling particles. A city slowly receives another material. Ash enters the streets like an unwanted weather. It lands on food, cloth, hair, roofs, statues, mosaics, counters, carts, animals, and open water. At the thermopolium, someone covers a vessel. At the cloth shop, a merchant pulls fabric farther inside. At the bakery, a worker checks the oven and then the sky. At the fountain, people hurry a little more. At a house, someone closes shutters or brings items indoors. At the forum, the watchers become less casual. The ash is still light, but it has crossed the boundary between mountain and city. This is the point at which the familiar landscape becomes intimate danger. The mountain is no longer only above Pompeii. It is in Pompeii, on its roofs, in its water, on its bread, on its hands. And still, responses differ. Some people prepare to leave, others go home first, some gather valuables, some look for family members, some worry about older relatives, children, animals, slaves, documents, money, household gods, jewellery, keys, food and water. Some may think it wiser to shelter inside. Some may believe the falling material will pass. Some may not know the roads are the better choice until the roads themselves become harder. A city does not make one decision. A city makes thousands. Each household becomes its own council. Leave now, wait, pack, pray, find someone, close the door, open the door, go to the gate, return for something, watch the mountain, cover the food, save the animals, carry the child, take the money, take the keys, take water. The ordinary routines of mourning begin to fracture into choices. At a wealthy house, someone may order servants to prepare for departure. A chest is opened. Small valuables are gathered. Documents, coins, jewellery, perhaps a household image. The atrium that was calm in mourning is now full of movement. The painted walls still glow with colour, but the air is less clear. Ash settles through the opening above the central basin. The water below receives it in soft circles. A person looks upward through the open roof. The sky is no longer trustworthy. In a poorer dwelling, the choices are harsher. There may be fewer valuables to gather, but also fewer resources for travel. Less transport, less protection, less certainty about where to go. A person who owns little can leave quickly in one sense, but leaving means stepping into danger with little support. Staying may feel like shelter. Leaving may feel like exposure. Disaster reveals inequality. It does not create it. It shows what was already there. The same ash falls on rich and poor, but not everyone can respond in the same way. A cart owner can load goods. A person with family outside the city knows where to go. A wealthy household may command labour. A traveller may already have a route. A worker may not be free to decide. An enslaved person may wait for orders. A child depends on adults. An elderly person depends on help. The city is no longer only a city of streets and shops. It is a city of unequal choices under a changing sky. The ash thickens. The day grows dimmer. Not night exactly. A false evening. The sun is still somewhere above the world, but the column from Vesuvius is altering the light. Shadows change, colours flatten. The red walls look duller. The white stone looks grey. The blue of the sky disappears behind ash and cloud. Lamps may be lit indoors earlier than they should be. A person standing in a doorway may feel the strangeness deeply. It is day, but the city is losing daylight. This is the kind of visual transformation we need to hold. Pompeii is not disappearing all at once. It is becoming less itself. The streets that were bright are muted. The fountains that were clear are speckled. The roofs that were ordinary are dusted. The painted walls are dimmed. The mountain is no longer a background shape. The sky has become a ceiling of threat. Still, the city moves. A man hurries through the street with cloth over his head. Not in panic, perhaps, but in practical discomfort. The ash stings. It enters hair, eyes, mouth, clothing. A woman carries a vessel close to her body. A child is pulled along by the hand. A dog barks at nothing visible. A mule refuses to go forward until struck or led with force. A seller abandons a stall partly packed. Someone shouts a name. The sound of the city changes again. Normal city sounds are replaced by urgent domestic sounds. Doors closing, objects being moved, feet moving faster, people calling relatives, animals resisting, carts being prepared, jars breaking, ash falling. The ash has a sound when enough of it falls, a soft dry sound, on roofs, on awnings, on leaves, on stone, on water, almost like rain, but wrong. Rain refreshes, even when inconvenient. Ash covers. It dries the mouth. It blurs the air. It adds weight. At the baths, the mood changes. Warm rooms, water, and conversation no longer feel like the centre of the day. People leave, or try to leave. A person who came for comfort now returns to the street under an altered sky. The bathhouse, designed around controlled heat, water, and social rhythm, meets a force that cannot be controlled by architecture. At the Forum, the open space becomes more exposed. People may gather, then scatter. Some look toward officials or temples searching for meaning or instruction. Public space can reassure when order holds. But when the sky itself becomes strange, public space can also make uncertainty visible. Everyone can see everyone else looking unsure. The temples stand, the statues stand, the columns stand. The mountain rises beyond them, no longer silent. Some may pray, some may flee, some may wait, some may not know which action is wise. Hindsight wants a single correct choice: leave immediately. But inside the moment, the city does not yet know the full sequence. Ashfall is dangerous and worsening, but the deadliest surges will come later. Some who leave may survive, some who shelter may not, some who leave late may be trapped. Some in nearby Herculaneum will face a different sequence of danger. Each place experiences the eruption differently. We tell Pompeii's story carefully because a real disaster is not a simple lesson delivered in perfect order. It is confusion, incomplete knowledge, changing conditions, human attachment, delay, hope, fear, dust. The mountain continues to send material into the sky. The column rises and spreads. Pumice begins to fall more heavily. Small stones, light but accumulating, descend across the city. They clatter softly on roofs and streets, a sound more troubling than the earlier ash. People hold coverings over their heads. Roofs begin collecting weight. Streets become harder to walk. The surface underfoot changes from stone to loose volcanic material. Pompeii's familiar ground is being replaced. This is one of the most powerful images of the story. The city's own streets disappear beneath material from the mountain. The stepping stones remain for a while, then become less distinct. The wheel ruts fill. The thresholds blur. The Forum's surface changes. The city's map is slowly erased from above. A person who knew every stone must now walk through a city becoming unfamiliar. At a bakery, the oven may still hold bread. Work has stopped, or nearly stopped. The loaves that would later become famous, carbonized and preserved, remind us of interruption. Bread meant to be eaten becomes evidence. A meal becomes archaeology. A routine becomes a timestamp. This is Pompeii's great emotional power. The eruption did not preserve only monuments, it preserved interruption. A loaf not eaten, a door not reopened, a jar left in place, a wall painting still bright beneath ash, a counter abandoned, a room sealed by disaster, a street covered midlife. History usually preserves what people meant to preserve: inscriptions, monuments, tombs, statues, official records. Pompeii preserved what people did not mean to preserve. It preserved the ordinary because the ordinary was suddenly stopped. That is why we have to spend time with the ordinary before describing the end, because the ordinary is what the ash carried forward. In a house, a household shrine may receive a hurried prayer. The small gods of the household, the lairs and other protective presences, belong to domestic life. A family might make offerings there in normal times. On this day, the meaning becomes sharper. Protection is no longer symbolic only, it is desired immediately. A lamp is lit, the flame trembles, ash darkens the light from the opening above. Someone gathers objects, someone calls from the street, someone hesitates. The house, which was shelter in the morning, now becomes a question. Is inside safer? Is outside safer? Do we wait? Do we leave? Do we carry what matters? What matters? In disaster, the value of objects changes. Things that seemed important at breakfast may be abandoned by afternoon. Things that seemed ordinary may be seized because they are portable, precious, or emotionally necessary. Keys, coins, jewellery, documents, a small statue, food, water, a cloak, a child's hand. The city is full of choices made under falling ash. At the gate, movement increases. People try to leave with bundles, animals, carts, or only what they can carry. The road beyond the city is not instantly safe. Ash falls there too. Visibility worsens. The air becomes difficult. The ground changes. But leaving at least means moving away from the source, or so people hope. A cartwheel struggles through accumulating pumice. A mule resists. A person lifts a child over uneven ground. Someone drops an object and does not stop to recover it. Someone else does stop. The decision to stop can change a life. The decision not to stop can also change a life. The eruption makes every gesture heavier. We return to the centre of the city one more time. The forum is dim. The familiar public buildings are still present, but ash softens their outlines. The mountain's column dominates the sky. The air is full of falling material. The sun is losing its authority. A city built of stone, plaster, paint, commerce, and human habit is being overtaken by something older than the city. The earth beneath it has opened into the sky. That is the strange reversal. Mountains are supposed to be stable. The sky is supposed to be open. On this day, the mountain moves upward and the sky comes down. Pompeii's world turns vertical. Ash rises. Ash falls. People look up. Streets disappear beneath material from above. The city is caught between mountain and sky. This second part closes in that changed light. The first part showed Pompeii alive, ordinary, warm and full of routines. The fountains ran, the ovens were warm, the forum received footsteps, the thermopolium served food, the baths promised comfort, the painted rooms held colour, the mountain waited. Now the waiting is over. The mountain has begun to speak, not in words, in tremors, in ash, in pumice, in a towering column, in a false darkness arriving while the day should still be bright. The people of Pompeii are no longer simply living through an ordinary Roman day. They are beginning to understand that the landscape itself has changed. Some are leaving, some are gathering belongings, some are praying, some are watching, some are still hoping the worst will pass. The city has not disappeared yet. That comes later. For now, Pompeii stands in a strange half-light, still recognizable, still full of movement, but no longer secure inside its own day. The streets are turning grey, the fountains are speckled, the roofs are taking weight, the mountain is rising into the sky. And beneath that darkening sky, Pompeii is still Pompeii, but only for a little longer. The third part of the story begins under a sky that is no longer day, not night exactly, not the gentle night that comes slowly after sunset, with lamps lit by choice, meals ending, doors closing, and the city settling into familiar darkness. This is a different darkness, a daylight darkened from above, a sky filled with ash, pumice, smoke, and the rising force of Vesuvius. Pompeii is still there. The streets are still there. The fountains, the shops, the houses, the bakery ovens, the forum, the baths, the painted rooms, the stepping stones, the counters, the shrines, the walls, the gates, all of them still exist, but they are changing. not by fire racing through the streets, not by one single instant of disappearance, but by accumulation, by falling ash, by small stones, by weight, by breath becoming harder, by light becoming weaker, by the familiar city slowly losing its shape. This is the hour when Pompeii begins to become less like a living city and more like a memory being covered before it has finished living. The ash falls softly at first, then more steadily. It touches rooftops. It gathers on awnings, it settles on the edges of fountains, it lies across painted walls and shop counters, it fills the grooves of the streets, it collects in the ruts made by cartwheels, it begins to soften the hard outlines of stone. The city's surfaces grow pale and grey. People move through it with cloth over their heads, over their mouths, over their shoulders. Some carry bundles, some carry children, some carry jars, coins, tools, household gods, documents, lamps, or nothing at all. Some move quickly toward the gates, others remain near their homes, uncertain whether the danger outside is worse than the danger inside. The city is full of decisions, and every decision is made with incomplete knowledge. Leave now, wait longer, return for someone, search for family, protect the house, take valuables, take food, take water, take nothing, take the road, take shelter. Every choice feels temporary while it is being made, but some choices become final because the city changes faster than people expect. This is one of the quiet tragedies of Pompeii. Not everyone understood that the ordinary world was ending. The mountain had become active, yes. Ash was falling, yes. The sky had darkened, yes. But the human mind often looks for the version of events that still allows life to continue. Perhaps the eruption would pass. Perhaps the roofs would hold. Perhaps the road would clear. Perhaps the city would be dirty tomorrow but still alive. Perhaps this was frightening but survivable. Perhaps. Pompeii is full of perhaps. At a bakery, the work has stopped. The oven, which was the centre of morning life, still holds heat. Bread that was meant to be eaten waits inside or nearby, changed by the interruption of the day. Flour dust and volcanic ash meet on the same surfaces. A counter that held ordinary trade is now quiet. A millstone stands where it stood in the morning, heavy and patient, but no one is turning it now. The bakery is one of the most powerful places to imagine during the eruption, because it shows how quickly usefulness can become evidence. In the morning, bread meant breakfast. By afternoon, bread meant interruption. Centuries later, bread would mean memory. That is how Pompeii works on the mind. It takes ordinary things and turns them into witnesses. A loaf, a lamp, a jar, a key, a wall painting, a fountain, a street stone, a doorway, a dog's chain, a counter, a room. Things that should have disappeared through use instead remained because use was cut short. But in this moment, no one is thinking about archaeology. A person leaving the bakery may look back only once. Perhaps there is too much ash to stay. Perhaps the roof is beginning to gather dangerous weight. Perhaps someone has called from the street. Perhaps a child is coughing. Perhaps the family must move now before the road becomes worse. The door is left, or closed, or partly closed. A small decision, now unknowable. The ash keeps falling. In the streets, footsteps are no longer the same. In the morning, sandals and bare feet met stone. Now they step into layers of loose volcanic material. The road surface is changing from hard to unstable. Each step sinks slightly. The raised stepping stones across the street, so useful in ordinary rain or street wash, begin to lose their clarity as material gathers around them. A person who knew the city by foot now finds the city less familiar. The street that led easily toward the Forum is harder to follow. The corner that usually smelled of bread smells of dust. The fountain basin is speckled and dull. The painted sign at a shop is dimmed. The sky gives no comfort. A cart tries to move through the accumulating ash and pumice. Its wheels resist. The animal pulling it lowers its head and struggles. Someone pushes from behind. Another person pulls at the animal's harness. The cart is loaded with household goods, or maybe trade goods, or maybe people too tired to walk. It moves a little, stops, moves again. Every delay matters, but leaving without the cart may feel impossible. What has been packed? Food, water, money, cloth, tools, family belongings, objects that took years to acquire, objects tied to identity. In disaster, possessions become questions. What is worth carrying when the world changes? What is too heavy? What can be replaced? What cannot? Who gets to decide? A jar falls from a bundle and breaks on the ash-covered street. In another time, this would be irritating, maybe costly. Now no one stops for long. The pieces remain there, already losing themselves under the falling material. Pompeii becomes a city of abandoned objects, not because people did not value them, because time became heavier than things. At a fountain, the water still moves, but it is altered. Ash falls into the basin, collects on the surface and gathers along the edges. The sound of the water is still familiar, but now it is partly muffled by what is falling from the sky. A person fills a vessel quickly. Another waits but keeps looking upward. The fountain, which was a place of conversation in the morning, is now a place of urgency. Water is still necessary. Even in disaster, the body continues to need what it needed before. Thirst does not wait for history to settle. A child coughs and rubs at their face. An adult pulls cloth more tightly around the child's mouth and leads them away. The gesture is simple, protective, and ancient. Across all disasters, in all centuries, someone holds a child closer and tries to make the air safer. We do not need to describe fear loudly. It is enough to see the hand. A hand over a child's head. A cloth held in place. A body turned away from falling ash. A faster step towards shelter. The city's sound is now different from any ordinary day. The market calls are gone. The easy street conversations are gone. The normal rhythm of carts, fountains, shop counters, and household errands has been replaced by a more broken soundscape. Ash falling, pumice striking roofs, footsteps dragging through loose material. Animals resisting, doors closing, names called through dim air, a distant crash, perhaps from a roof or structure taking weight, coughing, prayers, the mountain's activity above everything. Pompeii is no longer moving as one city. It is fragmenting into households, families, groups, and individuals, each trying to respond to a danger that changes from hour to hour. In a house with painted walls, the atrium receives ash through its open roof. The pool below, once meant to catch rainwater, now catches grey material from the eruption. The architecture that made the house beautiful and open to the sky becomes a channel through which the sky enters too much. A person moves through the atrium carrying a lamp. It is day, but the lamp is needed. This is one of the strongest images of the eruption, lamps lit in daylight. The sun has not set, but the sky has been taken. Rooms that should be naturally bright become dim. Painted walls glow strangely in weak flame. The colours are still there, red, black, yellow, white. But the light has changed, and with it the mood of the house. Someone gathers small valuables from a chest. Someone calls for a servant. Someone tries to close part of the house. Someone listens to the roof. The house is no longer only home. It is shelter, storage, trap, memory, and question. Outside, pumice continues to fall. It is light in individual pieces, but weight is made by number. A roof can hold a little, then more, then too much. The danger is gradual, which makes it harder. A roof does not announce from the beginning the exact moment it will fail. People inside must decide whether to trust it, clear it, leave it, or remain beneath it because the street feels worse. Again, the disaster is not one decision. It is a series of narrowing options. At the Forum, the city's public heart is almost unrecognizable. The open space that once gathered people, business, status, worship, and civic life is now exposed to the falling material. Columns collect ash along their bases and ledges. The ground is no longer the same surface. Statues and buildings become muted shapes. The mountain's column has altered the sky into something vast and unnatural. Some people may still pass through the Forum, but not as citizens moving through civic space. They pass through as people seeking a route, shelter, information, or escape. Public identity dissolves under ash. A person is no longer mainly merchant, patron, voter, customer, servant, freedman, traveller, or priest. A person is someone trying to live through the next hour. Yet even now, habits remain. Someone may still lock a door. Someone may still carry keys. Someone may still gather coins. Someone may still try to protect a household shrine. Someone may still call a slave by name. Someone may still follow a familiar route even when that route is becoming difficult. Human beings carry ordinary habits into extraordinary moments. That is why final hours feel so real. They are not pure chaos. They are normal life breaking unevenly. Near a thermopolium, The counter is abandoned or nearly so. The large jars set into it remain, their contents no longer the centre of business. A cup may be left, a surface dusted with ash, a doorway half covered, a painted scene behind the counter dimmed by the strange light. In the morning, this was a place for food and conversation. Now it is a still point in a city moving away from itself. The ash covers without judgment. It falls on wealthy houses and modest rooms, on temples and taverns, on bread and wine, on painted walls and rough plaster, on jewellery and broken pottery, on prayers and business accounts, on everything that was separate in life. But although the ash falls widely, its consequences are not equal. A wealthy household may have more people to help, more animals, more vehicles, more options, more portable wealth. A poor person may leave with almost nothing. An enslaved person's movement may depend on another's command. A sick person may be unable to flee quickly. Children, the elderly and the vulnerable depend on the strength and decisions of others. Some people have somewhere to go, others only have the road. Disaster reveals the structure of a society. It shows who can move, who must wait, who is protected, who is ordered, who is forgotten, who is carried, who carries. In the streets, some people move toward the gates. The city's exits become vital. A gate that was ordinary in the morning becomes a threshold between one danger and another. Inside, ash accumulates in familiar streets. Outside, roads lead through the same falling material, but perhaps towards safer distance. The road is difficult, but still hope. A family or household group moves with cloths over their heads. One person carries a bundle, another carries a child. Someone else turns back, perhaps remembering an object, perhaps hearing a name, perhaps unwilling to leave without someone. A debate happens in a few urgent words. Keep moving, wait, go back, no, yes, now. The details are gone, but the pattern is universal. Disaster compresses language. Long thoughts become short commands. The ash becomes thicker. The false darkness deepens. The air grows more difficult. Inside some homes, people shelter. They may believe the house is safer than the streets. They may be right for a time. They may be wrong later. Some cover openings. Some move into inner rooms. Some gather lamps and water. Some wait for the fall to pass. Waiting can feel sensible. When the outside world becomes hostile, walls feel like wisdom. But ash changes the meaning of walls and roofs. A house protects from ordinary weather. A house is not always protection from a mountain. The eruption continues for hours. It is not one flash of destruction. This duration matters for the rhythm of the story. It means people had time to think, act, hesitate, change plans, grow tired, and make mistakes. It means the city did not vanish in a blink. It was overtaken in stages. This stage quality is what makes Pompeii's final hours so haunting. Morning life, uncertain signs, strange sky, falling ash, increasing darkness, accumulating weight. Difficult streets, shelter, escape, delay, silence approaching. Each stage gives people time to hope that the next will not come, but the next comes. At a small household shrine, a lamp burns. The flame is weak but steady. Ash has entered the room despite efforts to keep it out. The household gods stand in their place, small witnesses to fear and routine. Someone has made an offering, perhaps hurriedly. Someone has touched the shrine. Someone has asked for protection. There is tenderness in this. It reminds us that the people of Pompeii were not simply victims in an archaeological story. They were human beings with beliefs, rituals, fears, attachments, obligations, and ways of making meaning when the world became unstable. A person in danger reaches for what has always offered order: a god, a family member, a doorway, a familiar object, a route, a prayer, a lamp. The ash does not answer, it keeps falling. Outside, the street grows deeper underfoot. Pumice and ash collect against walls. The lower parts of doorways begin to disappear. Steps become slopes. Rooflines gather weight. The city's geometry softens. Hard Roman stone, sharp corners, raised thresholds, street edges, wheel ruts, all blur under the same grey material. Pompeii is being erased while still occupied. This is the central image of the third part. A city losing its lines, not yet gone, but no longer fully itself. The stepping stones across the street, so clear in the morning, now rise only partly above the accumulating layer. A person crosses them awkwardly, then steps down into loose material on the other side. The familiar rhythm of crossing is broken. The street resists the body. A dog runs across and disappears into haze. A door opens, then closes. A voice calls from somewhere unseen. The city has become smaller because visibility has shrunk. When you cannot see far, the world becomes immediate. The next doorway, the next hand, the next breath, the next step. At the baths, the warmth that once offered comfort is no longer enough. If people remain there, it is not for leisure. The idea of comfort has left the building. The pools, the heated rooms, the changing spaces, the painted surfaces, all of them belong to a normal day that is being taken away. The architecture remains, but the purpose is suspended. At a workshop, tools are left behind. A hammer, a chisel, a loom weight, a jar of material, a half-finished object. The worker may have intended to return. Many abandoned things in disasters are left with the expectation of return. That expectation is part of their sadness. People often do not abandon a world because they believe it is gone forever. They leave because they believe they may come back. A door is closed so it can be opened later. A chest is locked so it can be recovered. A tool is set down where it will be found tomorrow. A loaf is left because supper can wait. A wall painting remains because walls do not travel. The tragedy is that tomorrow does not arrive in the expected form. The city's outer roads are difficult now. Those who left earlier have a better chance than those leaving late. Those who delayed face deeper material, darker air, and greater confusion. Some may turn toward the sea, others toward countryside, others toward nearby towns or villas. Some may not know where best to go. The eruption affects the entire region in different ways. Pompeii is not alone under the darkening sky, but our story remains inside and near Pompeii because the city itself is our central figure. Like Titanic in the ocean, Pompeii is a world in crisis. Titanic was a lit ship in black water. Pompeii is a living city under a falling sky. Both stories hold attention because the world remains visible while danger advances. The ship stayed lit while it sank. The city stayed recognizable while it disappeared. This recognition is what hurts. If everything were instantly destroyed, there would be less time to feel the loss. But Pompeii remains itself long enough for us to see what is being covered. The bakery, the fountain, the painted house, the forum, the stepping stones, the thermopolium, the shrine, the bath, the gate, the street. Each one receives ash. Each one becomes quieter. In one house, someone may decide at last to leave. The lamp is taken, or left. A bundle is lifted. A door is opened to the grey street. The outside air is worse than expected. The person hesitates. The inner room feels safer, but staying feels dangerous too. This moment, the threshold, is one of the deepest human images in any disaster. Inside and outside, known and unknown, shelter and escape, waiting and movement. Every threshold asks a question. On this day, many thresholds in Pompeii ask questions no one could answer. A person steps out, or steps back in. History later finds only the result, not the thought. As the eruption continues, the sound of falling material becomes constant. It is no longer a novelty, it is the environment. The ears adapt, the mind narrows, the body tires. Carrying anything becomes harder. Breathing through cloth becomes uncomfortable. Eyes sting, feet sink, fear becomes fatigue. In long disasters, exhaustion becomes part of danger. People make decisions while tired. They carry children until arms ache. They hold cloth until hands cramp. They walk through material that shifts underfoot. They search in dimness. They wait too long because movement is hard. The final hours are not only dramatic, they are physical. Weight, dust, heat, thirst, darkness, distance. The body meets history first. Near the edge of the city, a group moves slowly through ash. They may be heading toward a road that once felt familiar. The road now looks strange. The landscape beyond Pompeii is altered too. Farms, vineyards, walls, paths, gardens, all are receiving material from the same sky. The productive land around Vesuvius, the land that made life rich, is now part of the danger. The mountain that fed the region is covering it. That irony sits at the heart of Pompeii. Fertility and destruction come from the same earth. The volcanic soil that supported vineyards and gardens belonged to the same system that produced eruption. A generous landscape was also an unstable one, but the people knew the generosity better than the instability. Most human beings do. We trust what has sustained us, until it changes. The day darkens further. Lamps become more visible in interiors. In the streets, people move as shapes. A doorway glows here, a flame there. A covered head passes, a hand reaches, a mule stumbles, a bundle falls, a person turns back to lift it, then decides not to. Somewhere a roof fails under weight. We do not linger on the result. We only hear the sound, a heavy collapse, a cloud of dust, a silence afterward. Then the falling continues. Such sounds must have changed the city's psychology. At first, roofs are trusted. Then one fails. Another perhaps. People begin listening upward. The house, once protective, becomes uncertain. The street, once exposed, becomes difficult. There is no simple safety. This is where the story becomes most tense. Not because of fast action, because every option is imperfect. Leaving is dangerous. Staying is dangerous. Waiting is dangerous. Moving is dangerous. The city is trapped in uncertainty while the ash accumulates. The Forum is almost empty now, or emptier than a living city's centre should be. Public spaces lose their purpose when the public disperses. The temples remain. The columns remain. The ground rises slowly under ash. The mountain's column still dominates the hidden sky. The ordinary civic time of Pompeii has stopped. There is no market rhythm now, no easy civic gathering, no leisurely discussion, no ordinary crossing of the square. The city's clock is no longer the Forum, the market, or the baths. It is the eruption. The ash measures time, layer by layer. The third part moves toward evening or night. Though the distinction has become blurred, the eruption has brought darkness early, and the natural sunset may be hidden within volcanic gloom. The city is already in a kind of night before night. This is not the calm medieval night of rain and lanterns, not the cold titanic night of stars over water. This is a thick falling darkness, and yet we keep the telling gentle. Because respect does not require loudness. A quiet voice can carry heavy history. A slow description can honour what happened without turning suffering into spectacle. We remember that Pompeii's people did not exist so that we could be shocked. They lived because they lived. They worked, ate, prayed, argued, loved, served, bought, sold, repaired, decorated, carried, and slept. The eruption ended many of those lives, but it did not erase their humanity. The ash preserved enough for us to approach them carefully. And so we approach carefully. In a dim room, a lamp burns lower. In a street, ash falls. At a fountain, water is nearly hidden. At a bakery, the oven cools. At a doorway, footprints gather and then vanish beneath new material. At a wall, painted colour waits under dust. At a gate, people still try to leave. At the mountain, the eruption continues. Pompeii is not yet silent, but silence is coming. The city's sounds are fewer now, less trade, less laughter, less routine, more falling, more movement toward escape, more closed rooms, more distance between voices. The city that woke to bread and fountains now listens to the sky. As this third part closes, let us stand for a moment in one of the streets, not too close to danger in our imagination, but close enough to see the transformation. The stepping stones are partly covered. The walls are pale with ash. The shop fronts are closed or abandoned. A lamp glows faintly inside a doorway. The fountain sound is muffled. The air is grey. The mountain is no longer just above the city. It is all around it. On the stones, in the basin, on the roofs, in the rooms, in the breath. Pompeii was still Pompeii in the morning. Now it is becoming something else. A city under ash. A city between life and memory. A city whose final ordinary day is being sealed, layer by layer, beneath the falling sky. The fourth part of the story begins after the city has almost lost its voice. The streets that were full of footsteps in the morning are now heavy with ash and pumice. The fountains that once gave the city its steady sound are muffled or buried. The bakery ovens are cooling. The shop counters are abandoned. The Forum is dim and altered. The painted houses, the small gardens, the household shrines, the jars, the lamps, the tools, the doorways, the stepping stones, the familiar routes through the town, all are being covered by the mountain. Pompeii has not vanished in one instant. It has been transformed hour by hour, layer by layer, sound by sound, choice by choice. The ordinary Roman day that began with bread, water, sunlight, carts, voices, and warm stone has become a landscape of falling material and darkened air. The city is still physically there, but it is no longer moving as a city moves. Its routines have broken, its public spaces have emptied, its private rooms have become shelters, traps, or memories. Its streets have become difficult to recognize beneath the ash, and above it all, Vesuvius continues. The mountain that had been background is now everything. The mountain is in the sky, in the streets, on the roofs, in the fountains, on the painted walls, in the air. Pompeii, which had lived beneath the mountain for generations, is now being taken into it. The final stage of the disaster is not gentle in reality, and we do not pretend that it was. But we tell it with restraint, because this is a story of real people, not a spectacle. The eruption did not only cover buildings, it ended lives, it separated families, it stopped work, meals, prayers, conversations, and journeys. It turned ordinary rooms into final places and ordinary objects into the last traces of human presence. Many people had already tried to leave. Some escaped. Some did not. Some stayed too long because the danger was not clear at first. Some returned for possessions or people. Some sheltered indoors, believing walls would protect them. Some were delayed by age, illness, obligation, poverty, status, fear, or confusion. Some had no power to decide for themselves. The story of Pompeii is not one story. It is thousands of different moments happening under the same darkened sky. A person at a gate, a person in a house, a person near a fountain, a person carrying a child, a person searching for someone, a person locking a door, a person leaving a lamp behind, a person thinking there would still be morning. History sees the layer of ash, but inside the moment, people saw only the next step, the next breath, the next decision, the next doorway, the next street, the next chance to move. As the eruption continued, Pompeii became increasingly difficult to escape. The streets filled, roofs took more weight, visibility lowered, the ground changed beneath people's feet. The air became dangerous. What had been a familiar town became a maze of grey material and fading landmarks. The raised stepping stones disappeared, the wheel ruts filled, the thresholds blurred, the painted walls dimmed, the fountains lost their clarity. A person who had known Pompeii by body and habit could no longer trust the city's usual shape. The city was becoming unfamiliar while people still stood inside it. This is one of the most haunting ideas in the story. Not only that Pompeii was destroyed, but that it became strange before it disappeared. A home that should protect becomes uncertain. A street that should guide becomes difficult. A mountain that should remain distant enters every room. A day that should continue into evening becomes an unnatural night. For many, the final danger came not from ash falling slowly, but from the later surges of heat, gas, and volcanic material that moved through the area. We do not need to describe this graphically. It is enough to understand that the eruption changed again, and when it did, the city's last remaining spaces of survival were overwhelmed. The living city stopped. The voices ended. The movement ended. The marketplace ended. The fountains ended. The work of the baker, the shopkeeper, the servant, the fuller, the priest, the child, the traveller, the merchant, the enslaved worker, the household, the animal, the whole urban rhythm, all of it was sealed beneath what the mountain had sent down. Then came silence, a silence different from sleep, different from night, different from an empty street after rain. This was the silence of a city removed from the surface of the world. Pompeii was covered. Walls still stood in places. Rooms still existed. Objects remained where they had been left. Bread stayed in ovens, jars stayed in storage. Paintings stayed on walls, counters stayed in shops, stones stayed in streets. But the city no longer belonged to daily life. It belonged to the earth. The ash that destroyed Pompeii also preserved it. This is the great paradox at the heart of the story. The same material that took the city from the living world protected much of its shape from time. Rain did not wash everything away. Later builders did not immediately rebuild over every detail. The ordinary objects were not all scattered, reused, burned, or forgotten in the usual ways. Instead, Pompeii slept under layers of volcanic material, a city wrapped in disaster, a city hidden from weather, a city removed from centuries of ordinary decay. The ash made a grave, but it also made an archive. In the years after the eruption, the surface world continued. Rome continued. Emperors came and went. Roads were used. Ships sailed. Families remembered lost relatives for a time. Survivors carried stories. Property boundaries changed. The landscape adjusted. New life grew. The mountain returned to its apparent stillness. But Pompeii was no longer part of daily movement. The streets were not walked. The fountains did not serve neighbours. The bakeries did not open. The forum did not fill. The wall paintings did not receive household glances. The stepping stones did not guide feet. The city's name survived in memory and record, but the place itself became buried, hidden, and gradually separated from the living world above it. Centuries passed. The Roman Empire changed. The Western Empire fell. New kingdoms rose. Languages shifted. Religions changed. Towns grew elsewhere. Farmers worked land above buried streets without seeing the city below. People built, prayed, fought, traded, married and died in worlds that no longer knew Pompeii as a visible town. The mountain remained. The city slept. This long sleep is part of why Pompeii feels so powerful. Titanic slept at the bottom of the Atlantic. Pompeii slept under ash. Both were lost worlds held in silence. Both were later found. Both became famous not only because disaster struck, but because traces remained. Enough traces for later people to walk, study, imagine, mourn, and ask questions. The rediscovery of Pompeii did not happen all at once in the romantic way imagination might prefer. There were earlier discoveries and accidental encounters with remains in the region. Systematic excavations developed over time, especially from the 18th century onward, as the buried city began to emerge from the ground. Archaeology itself changed across the centuries, from treasure hunting and collection toward more careful recording, preservation, and interpretation. At first, people were astonished by what the earth gave back. Walls, rooms, frescoes, mosaics, streets, objects, inscriptions, shops, baths, theatres, houses, and eventually the forms of people and animals preserved as voids in the ash, later cast in plaster and studied with deep emotion. These casts are among the most sensitive and powerful parts of Pompeii's modern story. They remind us that the city was not only architecture, it was human life. They must be treated with respect, not curiosity alone. They are not props. They are traces of people who experienced a real catastrophe. A calm history can acknowledge them without staring too long. What matters is the dignity of memory. The ash preserved the shape of loss, and later hands learned how to read it. But Pompeii's gift to history is not only tragedy. It is daily life. A wall painting in a dining room, a bakery oven, a counter with jars, a fountain at a crossroads, a street worn by carts, a shop opening to the road, a small garden, a household shrine, a mosaic floor, a room painted red, a staircase, a lamp, a cooking pot, a loaf of bread. These are the things that make Pompeii extraordinary. The city shows the Roman world at human scale. Not only senators, emperors, generals and monuments, but streets, meals, houses, work, decoration, water, trade, bodies moving through rooms, hands touching objects, routines interrupted. Pompeii gives us the feeling that we're standing very close to people who did not expect to become history. That closeness is why the story must be told gently. When archaeologists uncovered streets, they were not simply uncovering stones. They were uncovering routes once known by memory. The road from a house to a fountain, from a shop to the forum, from a bakery to a customer, from a bath to a home, from a gate to the outside world. Routes crossed by sandals, carts, animals, and bare feet. When they uncovered a bakery, they were not simply finding an ancient business. They were finding labour paused. When they uncovered a thermopolium, they were not simply finding a counter. They were finding the social rhythm of quick meals and street life. When they uncovered a painted room, they were not simply finding art. They were finding domestic imagination. When they uncovered graffiti, they were not simply finding markings. They were finding casual voices that survived because disaster sealed them. The ash took Pompeii from the living world, but it carried its ordinary life into memory. That is the emotional centre of this final part. Pompeii was destroyed, but it was also preserved, lost, but also held, silenced, but also made able to speak in another way. The city no longer spoke through living voices, market calls, fountains, carts, and household conversations. It spoke through objects, rooms, streets, stains, voids, repairs, paintings, tools, and the arrangement of things left behind. Archaeology listens differently from ordinary hearing. It listens to placement, to where, to layers, to absence, to what was left where, to what was repaired, to what was abandoned, to what was valued enough to carry, to what was too heavy or too ordinary to take. In Pompeii, even the ordinary becomes eloquent. A row of jars says something, a millstone says something, a door threshold says something, a fountain basin says something, a small room says something, a road rut says something, a loaf says something, not in words, but in presence. As the city emerged, the modern world saw ancient Rome differently. Pompeii helped make Roman domestic life visible. It showed houses not as abstract floor plans, but as spaces with colour, art, storage, work, worship, and daily movement. It showed urban life beyond elite texts. It showed small businesses, public baths, street food, household religion, and the physical closeness of ordinary routines. It also showed how fragile a living city can be. A city feels permanent from inside itself. Its streets seem established, its houses familiar, its fountains dependable, its mountain part of the horizon. But history knows that permanence can be an illusion. Pompeii's final hours remind us that ordinary life is always more fragile than it appears, and therefore more precious. This does not mean we should live in fear. It means we should notice. The bread before it cools, the water before it stops, the painted wall before it fades, the conversation before it disappears, the street before it is buried, the day before it becomes history. The people of Pompeii did not wake to be symbols, they woke to live. That is why we remember them best, not by beginning with destruction, but by beginning with mourning. The fountains still ran, the ovens were still warm, the city still believed in the day, the mountain waited, and then the sky changed. Now, in the quiet after the story, let us return to the buried city as it rested for centuries. Imagine Pompeii beneath the earth. No footsteps in the streets, no lamps in the rooms, no voices at the counters, no water drawn from the fountains, no bread sold at the bakery, no bathers entering warm rooms, no carts along the stones. Only layers above layers, silence above rooms, ash above thresholds, earth above paintings, roots moving slowly through time, rain falling on the surface far above the streets, seasons passing, centuries passing, the city not alive but not entirely gone, holding, waiting, not waiting consciously of course. Cities do not think. Ash does not remember in the way people remember, but to us looking back, the buried city seems to wait because it held so much. It held colour, it held rooms, it held roads, it held the marks of hands, it held the interruption. And when the earth was opened, Pompeii returned not as a living city, but as a place where the living could meet the ancient ordinary. A visitor walking Pompeii today walks through absence and presence at the same time. The streets are empty of their original inhabitants, but the stones are still there. The houses are roofless in many places, but the walls still outline rooms. The fountains no longer serve the same neighbourhoods, but their basins remain. The paintings are protected, studied, restored, and watched. The mountain still rises beyond the site. The sun still warms the stones. The sky is blue again. The silence is different now from the silence after the eruption. It is curated, visited, studied, protected, and fragile in another way. Modern Pompeii requires care because preservation is never finished. Exposure to air, weather, tourism, time, and human touch can damage what ash once protected. The city that survived burial must now survive being seen. This is another quiet lesson. Discovery is not the end of preservation. It is the beginning of responsibility. To uncover a city is to owe it care. To tell its story is to owe it respect. Tonight, we have tried to tell it not as horror, but as memory, not as spectacle, but as a final ordinary day transformed by the mountain. The final image of Pompeii does not need to be the eruption itself. It can be a street, a quiet Roman street, stone paving, raised crossing stones, a doorway, a fountain, a painted wall, a view of Vesuvius beyond the roofs. In the morning, this street was alive. In the eruption, it was covered. In archaeology, it was found. In memory, it remains. That is enough. As we come to the end, let the images become softer. The bakery in morning light, the fountain splashing, the thermopolium counter, the red-painted room, the forum under sun, the mountain beyond the rooftops, the first strange plume, the falling ash, the lamps lit in daytime, the streets growing grey, the silence after, the buried centuries, the careful hands of rediscovery, the city returning as memory. Pompeii's final hours were not only the story of destruction, they were the story of a city caught in the middle of being ordinary. That ordinariness is what the ash preserved, and because it was preserved, we can still walk close to it in imagination. A city of warm stones, running water, painted walls, bread ovens, street counters, household shrines, cart ruts, human plans. The ash covered all of it. But it did not make it meaningless. It made it visible to time. Now the night around us is calm. The room is quiet. The story can settle. We leave Pompeii not at the height of the eruption, but in the later stillness, when the mountain is quiet again, the sky has cleared, and the buried city rests beneath the earth, holding its final day in silence. Let the streets grow dim. Let the fountain sound fade. Let the oven cool. Let the painted walls wait in darkness. Let the mountain stand under stars. And let the people of Pompeii remain in memory not only for how they died, but for how they lived. In houses, streets, shops, baths, kitchens, gardens and rooms filled with the small ordinary things that make a human world. The city sleeps now, under ash, under time, under the long attention of history, and somewhere beyond the quiet roofs of memory, the mountain waits beneath the same sky. While Pompeii, the city that was taken from the living world and given back to history, rests in the soft silence of the past.